Whew. I never thought I'd be making this video, but I just need to share not just for myself, but for anyone who's just ever ignored the signs because they just wanted something to work so badly. I got engaged to a Filipina, and months ago I had to break it off, and she still has my ring, and she's pretending like we're still engaged. This wasn't a decision I made lightly at all. I really wanted this to work because I really love to be married and start a family soon. What I learned along the way was I had no choice but to count my losses and just to walk away. At first, everything seemed great, and she's beautiful, she was fun. I thought I found someone special, but as time went on, I began noticing things that just didn't sit right. At first, I dismissed them as minor, so I just, brushed them off. I'm not a quitter. I wanted to believe we were compatible. And by the time it was just over, I wasn't just relieved that, it's over. I was thanking God that I didn't go through with it. So just allow me to explain. We met on a dating app while I was traveling to the Philippines. And at first it was nice. She was as beautiful as I imagined, and naturally we clicked. And there's something about her that made me be interested in her. She seemed genuine and different. And I took a chance. So I got on my motorbike and I drove 8 hours to see her. And what was supposed to be a few days just turned into a few weeks. And we went to an adjacent city and we enjoyed our time together. I got to meet her wonderful family. And that's just when I thought, maybe this is it, maybe I found someone worth committing to. And looking back now, I realized how much I wanted it to be real and how much I wanted it to believe, this was going to be good and meaningful. But just because something feels right doesn't make it right. At first, I ignored the small things because that's what you do when you care about someone, right? You overlook the little habits, the little quirks, because you're focused on the bigger picture and you're thinking about the future. But looking back, those little things weren't really little, they were warnings. And the first thing I noticed, she was obsessed with social media. I don't really have a problem with social media, I get it. People like to document their lives, but this is different. She's always taking photos, just always editing them, always focused on how she looked online. But that's when I realized she was one person online and another in private. I thought maybe she was just really into social media, but then I noticed there's something strange about it. She'd post pictures of things that we would do together, but I wasn't in them. Trips I took her on, the experience we shared. She would post about them, edit them, make them look perfect, but somehow I was never in them. It wasn't that she just liked taking pictures of herself, it was that she was just deliberately cutting me out of our memories. I'd look at her post and think, if I didn't know any better, I would think that she did this all alone. She wanted the experiences, but she didn't want the person that gave those experiences to her. And she did started posting about us because I shared those concerns with her. And if you looked at Facebook, you'd think that we'd have this beautiful romantic relationship, the perfect couple. And that's probably what she wanted people to see, but behind closed doors, it was different. She was dry, distant, disconnected. The affection she showed me online was just not real. It wasn't how she actually treated me, it was just how she wanted people to think she treated me. She was not really building a relationship, she was building a fantasy. But then there were these solo pictures, the ones that I just wasn't comfortable with. I got no problem at all with a woman wanting to feel confident in herself, but when you're engaged, there is a difference between sharing your life and presenting yourself like you're still available. I told her how I felt about it, and she said she understood, and she said she would stop, and for a while it seemed like she did until she didn't, and it kept happening. Every time I mentioned it, she would get I'd just get the same excuse. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I just wasn't thinking. But how do you forget something that your fiance told you was important to him? You just don't care. Even with these red flags, I still believed in us. I just thought, maybe she just needed time to adjust. Maybe she just didn't realize how this was making me feel. So I moved forward and I proposed. I did it right. I planned everything out. Beautiful venue, live bands, videographer. This wasn't something quick or casual. This was real and it was serious. And she said yes. And, she smiled and she looked really happy. But then almost immediately, I started seeing things differently. The moment we got engaged, I felt like something was off. It was small, but it just stuck with me. My dad called her to congratulate her, and she wouldn't even talk to him. Why? Because she was busy posting online. I watched as she carefully crafted the perfect engagement engagement announcement, making everything perfect, the captions, the lighting. Meanwhile, my dad, he just is welcoming her into my family, and he's just waiting for her to acknowledge him. That was the first time I thought, maybe this wasn't about us at all. It could be about, it just could be just like another thing for her to show off. But I let it slide, and maybe she was just excited. Maybe she'd settle in and we'd start planning our future together. But then something else happened, and I couldn't ignore it. The way she acted online just didn't change at all. She was still posting like as if she was still single, and she was perfectly curating her image, making herself like the center of attention. I would see if she would naturally shift into being an engaged woman to show pride in our relationship, but that didn't really happen. It was like the engagement really didn't matter to her. It was just another thing to add to her feed, it seemed. And the worst part, the moment I realized this wasn't just being selfish, it was something way deeper. After the engagement, it was time to start planning our future together, and we both knew what that would look like. We had a plan. It was clear, simple. It was mutual on both ends. She had one job to get her passport and finish school, and my job was to support her financially so she could finish school and I could file for the fiancé visa. And so by the time she would graduate, everything would just fall into place. I would take her to the US. We could start a life as a married couple, just simple, straightforward. The thing about plans is they only work when both people actually take them seriously. And I kept my word. I set an allowance for her every week, and I just made sure she didn't have to stress about expenses so she can just focus on what mattered, was her school, her future, which was our future. But on her end, she barely texted. And when she did, it was dry, short, robotic. She wouldn't call. She wouldn't share what was going on in her life. It was just like pulling teeth to get any real kind of conversation out of her. And she was posting all the time. She was constantly updating social media, just posting about us, like we're the most romantic couple on the planet, making it seem like it was like a perfect love story. But what kind of love story is that when she couldn't even take the time to call her fiance? And here's the worst part. When she did finally reach out, it wasn't just to check in on me, and it was when she needed more money. And I started noticing the pattern. And if I didn't text first, I wouldn't hear from her. But the second she needed help with something, suddenly she had time for our conversations. I let it slide, because I thought, maybe she's busy or stressed. But the truth is she just didn't care. But she wasn't working, She was living at home with her parents, focused on school, I thought. Because at that time, I just really believed I was investing in her future. I was waiting for an opportunity to see for myself if the feeling was real. And then the opportunity came. She had a college field trip. It was like a career convention or something. She promised that she would try to fundraise and she'd try to lower the cost, and I wouldn't have to worry about covering the whole thing. But then later she came back. She asked for the full amount, and she told me that she could only come up with 500 pesos, which is like $9. Now I had to ask myself, what do I do? If I was going to pay for her field trip, I needed to know that she actually cared about this relationship. I told her, fine, I will send the money, but on one condition: you need to update me often while you're there, and you need to include me and tell me about your day and stay connected. And before I sent that money, I promised myself if she fails to do this, I was done sending money. And then it got worse. A few days later, I saw what she had been doing instead. She had posted an entire photo shoot from her trip, looking like a model, wearing outfits I never seen before. Perfect lighting and, perfect shots. And every single one of them, she looked completely single. But then I saw the worst part about them. She wasn't wearing my ring. And that's when it hit me. Like, was she ever wearing my ring at all? I went back and I looked through her photos, and every single one she had posted over the months, sure enough, not one of them showed my ring. And that's when I confronted her. And she told me that secretly, she never agreed to stop posting solo photos. And she tried to convince me that somehow these photos were for both of us and she wasn't doing anything wrong. And that's when I brought up the ring, and she made some weak excuse about how she didn't want to lose it. And that just was the moment I was done. I didn't argue. I didn't warn her. I wasn't trying to reason with her anymore. I just stopped sending money. All this time, I had been keeping this to myself, and I hadn't told my family. I hadn't shared any of this. I was just handling this on my own. But I finally broke in. I finally told my Filipina stepmom and my dad. Stepmom was just asking me questions. Why would she need money for a field trip? Usually for colleges in the Philippines, they provide for that. And at that moment, I didn't even know if I had been scammed, and I still don't know, but I do know this. That was the last time that she ever got money from me. And that's when everything started unraveling. It got worse. I thought things would just quietly fade out and she would move on and I'd move on. We'd go our separate ways. Instead, things just took a turn I didn't expect. Out of nowhere, she had been telling her family that I was starving her. Meanwhile, I had spreadsheets of expenses proving that I was sending her money, and she wasn't struggling. She was being taken care of, and she knew it. And then she started saying my family was ruining her reputation. But honestly, no one in my family has ever said anything to her. If her reputation is ruined, I just wonder where's the proof. And just like her family, my family are good people too. Her family has never done anything wrong to me, and we've never done anything wrong to them. And then I found out she got caught cheating in her class and had failed that class. And instead of, fixing it, she dropped out of school completely. I learned something even worse. I guess she was so distressed that she went to ChatGPT and asked how to harm herself. At this point, I wasn't that angry anymore. I was just realizing this woman's unstable and she's spiraling. And her cousin started telling me stories about her past, about her exes, about the accusations that she made before. And that's when I learned one of her exes had been accused by her of the R word. That's when I knew I could never see her again. I was planning to get my engagement ring back, but after hearing that, I made a decision to cut her off completely, permanently, just no contact, because if she could throw around accusations like that, she could twist reality that easily. And what's stopping her from doing that to me? And that ring just wasn't worth the risk, so I just sacrificed it and walked away. But things got even worse. For months, she refused to wear my ring, but now she's finally wearing it. She's using it as a prop in pageants and modeling photos, just acting like we're still engaged. She still has engaged on her Facebook. And I debated whether I should share this, but just the more I thought about it, the more I realized if I don't say anything now, this could turn into something way worse. And my fear is this is gonna start looking like a sequel to Gone Girl. I don't know what she's trying to do, and I don't know if it's just for attention or just to save face or something more dangerous. I hope not. But what I do know is I just want nothing to do with it. I've cut her off, and I will never see her again. I will never speak to her again. And I hope for her sake, she just finds a way to move on, because I already have. I never wanted things to turn out this way, and I never thought I would be making a video like this. I got engaged because I truly believe in what we had, and I put in the effort, I made the sacrifices, I followed through with my word. But no matter how much effort you put in to something, and no matter how much you want something to work, you can't build a future with someone who just refuses to meet you halfway. And for a long time, I tried to reason with myself. I made excuses for her behavior, and I told myself she would change, and I thought this was just a rough patch. We'll work through it. But here's what I learned. The hardest decision isn't staying and trying to fix something broken. The hardest decision is accepting that it was never whole to begin with. And when you accept that, you don't try to hold it together anymore. You let it go. Some people, they may listen to this and think, dude, you lost your money, you lost your time, you lost your engagement. I don't see it that way. I see it as a win, because I gained something far more valuable than a relationship that was fake. I gained self-respect. And most importantly, I got my future back. And if there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's this. Pay attention to all the signs, and the small things that don't feel right, they're not small. They add up. Don't ignore your gut when it tells you something's off, and don't ever be afraid to walk away from someone who doesn't value the way that you value them. Walking away is not losing. Walking away is getting your self-respect back. If you ever see a woman out there in a beauty pageant acting like she's engaged to someone, just for the record, it has nothing to do with me. I've moved on, and I hope for her sake that she does too. But yeah, thanks for listening. Stay smart, and do not ignore red flags. Thanks.